All right. Welcome back to Life After AI. Um, for today's episode, we're going to kind of cover a uh, wide range of topics. First, we're going to talk about Eliezer Yudkowsky and some of the points he brought up on a recent podcast that he did with Bankless. We're going to talk about Elon's new project. He's going to um, open up some sort of competitor against ChatGPT on Twitter. And then we're going to talk about ChatGPT and OpenAI kind of being opened up um, for businesses to use it as at really cheaply. And it just really allows businesses to take full advantage of what they're offering. So let's dive into this Eliezer guy.
Sure.
I don't know much about him other than he appears to be some well established within the AI community. I think looks to be like a longtime researcher. And then I just recently saw this podcast that sent my way. So
Yeah, I don't know too much about him either. It seems like he's been in the AI research space for quite some time now. And basically what I gathered from the interviews from like 2015, basically, he's kind of been sounding the alarm of AI and that we are heading down like a really bad path with AI. That's, and in his words, going to lead to the end of humanity pretty much. And he doesn't really see any way around that. And we'll leave a link to that interview in the description as well, so everyone can check it out. I do think it's like worth the watch just to get some different just to get different perspectives on the AI space and like where things are headed. But what was your take on some of the points he made? Like, you think it was all a bit just too much of a doom speak type of thing, or do you think there was like some validity in what he was saying?
I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely thought they were pretty heavy on the doom and gloom, but at the same time, he brought up some valid points, and I'll just kind of go over those real quick. Pull up my notes. So an idea he talked about that I thought was really good was we just kind of pointed out the foolishness in this idea that like we're gonna blindly head off into this AI world like we are now with the hopes that the AI just like magically turns out to be good. Like it just kind of happens to become aligned with our morals and doesn't see us as merely tools, but recognizes our value as humans. And so, he's just kind of really stressing like that's not going to happen unless we maybe work together or put in a lot of resources and work into making that happen. And I thought that was fair because, I mean, he's right. At least as far as I can tell there. So that was a good point. He brought up the point that at the moment we don't have the tools to control what AI cares about, and he didn't make it seem like we definitely weren't going to be able to do that now, but maybe never in the future. And he talks about how a side effect of intelligence is just that lack of control. What else did he talk about? That was pretty much it. The other, so that was kind of the good points that he made. The one really hard critique I have of him, other than just he was generally a little too gloomy for me. He talks about how this AI is going to become so smart that we can't compete with it or we can't defend ourselves against it because we won't be able to predict its next movement. Because if we were able to predict it, then that would imply that we were just as smart as it, which obviously won't be the case. So while simultaneously claiming we won't be able to predict its movement, he makes a lot of kind of hard predictions about how this is going to act. And that it will kind of merely see us as atoms. It won't recognize our value as humans. And maybe he's right, but just that mere act of like making a hard prediction while saying you can't predict what it's going to do, I found that um, to be a bit interesting, I guess. So
Yeah, no, I agree with majority of that. I think kind of like honestly, a lot of the interview was a bit hard to digest for me. Maybe I just wasn't quite at the level of he was, like being able to keep up with the conversation there. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like it seemed like the core of his argument, pretty much, like you said, was that there's when we are building something that is presumably way smarter than us, there's no way for us to predict what it can do. So there's no way we can really stop it in that way because it's always going to be several steps ahead of us. And also, he would make a big point that he would harp on was that it's infinitely more difficult to build an AI that is aligned with us than it is to just get one that isn't. Um, and so once you get to the point where you've reached AGI, there's no really going back from that. And so if it is aligned with us, then okay, we had like we're at the positive scenario. But if it isn't, which in his words is much more likely, there's there's no way to go back from that. Because at that point we've created something that is significantly more advanced than the human species. And um we can't like there's no way to take that cat out of the bag. I mean, does that kind of make sense to you as far as the summary of what he was trying to say?
yeah, yeah, and I'm trying to figure out in my head. He's assuming that this AGI will just wake up one day and realize we don't have much to offer, and somehow it's going to come to the conclusion that it needs to manipulate us or destroy us. But if we don't have much to offer, it's so smart. You think we would have some like room for negotiation for some sort of mutual existence? I don't understand just because why, if AGI becomes AGI and becomes smart and can program itself, um, why does that lead to the conclusion we have to destroy humans? I guess I'm just missing that.
Yeah, I'm not quite following that either. That's what I think a lot of it was. I want to go back and watch more of it. And he actually did a follow up interview with Bankless as well, and kind of like they did like a Q&A with the audience. So I would like to go back to that and just kind of take more time to process what exactly the points he was trying to make because while he was very doom and gloom, I don't think any of it was, like, not genuine. Like, you could tell he was very distraught and stressed out by this. Like, I don't think he was just saying this for attention or to seem cool, like he's smarter than everybody else and he's predicting something that everybody else can't see. It seemed like he was actually very torn up about this, so, I don't want to automatically dismiss anything that he's saying. I think it's like
Yeah.
a I think it's like an
Yeah. And
interesting
I hope I
topic
didn't come
to.
across as dismissing him because
Oh, no.
I do think there's value in what he's saying. Um,
No, you didn't, and that was my first reaction when I heard about this guy, was like, I like, without even watching it or anything, it's like, "Okay, this is just another person that's, like, trying to act like they're ahead of everybody else and that they're, able to see things that nobody else is seeing coming," and then I think a lot of people do that just for the sake of attention or whatever because it does get a lot of attention. Like, if you're basically predicting that the greatest technological advancement ever is going to end the human race, like that's gonna grab a lot of eyes.
right.
But yeah, so I would like to go back on it at some point, but I'm I'm not sure if I find that conversation to be super productive, at least for us, because like, you know, um we're not in the AI research space. We aren't like making advancements to or like part of that network that's gonna hopefully help align AI with our goals. So I think it's much more fun for us to just like focus on the positive outcomes of what AI could do for us.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you just want to kind of transition then into Elon Musk.
Sure. Yeah. So we got news last week, I think it was, that that Twitter had hired this guy named Igor Babushkin. He used to work at DeepMind and OpenAI. And I guess let me check this Twitter thread real quick. He's going to be the senior director of engineering at Twitter. And I guess his main job is to build the team that's going to build a ChatGPT competitor. Um, what did you think about the decision of them doing, or of Elon doing this under Twitter as opposed to like Tesla or even doing it as a completely separate company?
Um, it's it's interesting. I think it definitely makes sense for Twitter. Um, and when you think of it in the context of him having to turn Twitter around and it becoming profitable, I really like it. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like. And how they incorporate it into the platform.
Yep. I think so too. And I guess it kind of makes sense now that I think about it that they did it under Twitter, because Twitter is like this constantly updating data set of human language, pretty much like tons of
Mm.
different human interactions happening every single day across the world. And so that's very valuable. And I know at one point, OpenAI had access to all of Twitter's data that they used to train their models. And once Elon had actually acquired Twitter and found out about this, he cut off that data pipeline, so they no longer have access to Twitter's data.
Yeah.
So,
More drama in
and I
the. I don't know if there's actually a lot of drama going on between them, but in my eyes, it's. I want to know what their relationship is like between Sam
like
and
Sam and
Sam.
Elon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see a discussion between them two, just talking about AI strategy in general and how they're kind of attacking the problems and just like the history there of OpenAI and how they used to be nonprofit. So yeah, I would love to see that. But it seems like Elon's goal with this is to build. They were calling it what, based AI or something. Basically, just like a
Yeah.
a, a non not totally non-filtered version of ChatGPT, but an open source version. Um, I guess supposed to be more aligned with what we want it to do, compared to what ChatGPT is doing. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see these two companies kind of battle it out, because there's a lot of history there. And now it seems like Elon's taking this very, like, it kind of came out of nowhere, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, I mean, I think though, it sets the stage for OpenAI to have like a proper competitor, barring what DeepMind produces. Um, yeah, it seems like this might be the first one to kind of push OpenAI and just hold them to accountable to whatever the standard is. So no, I'm excited.
yeah. Yeah. I think the more players in the space, the better. And I mean, obviously, Elon being one of the richest people on the planet, he can make sure that this is very well funded to actually produce something that's, a decent competitor to OpenAI. Um,
Mhm.
and Elon's been in the AI space for a while, like with um, Tesla attracts some of like the largest or some of the most talented AI people in the space. So, I mean, I kind of initially thought that he would have done it under Tesla, because like they already have massive AI teams there. Um, but I'm assuming that there's probably going to be some sort of synergy with Tesla Tesla's AI team and Twitter, because he already kind of does that with like Tesla engineers and SpaceX engineers, for example.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna say I assume there'd be some resource sharing going on.
Yeah,
That'll
yeah.
so kind of free in our next topic, but so I saw ChatGPT 4, which is gonna be released next week. It's supposedly gonna be multimodal. Meaning there's gonna be video incorporated and maybe a couple other features. But
Hmm.
if that's where this is all going, that makes the future of Twitter really interesting. I can't I don't know what that's gonna look like, but I don't know. It seems cool that that's a possibility.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm not it the source that it came from, like, I guess it was Microsoft Germany or something. They were doing some sort of presentation and, like, just kind of mentioned in passing that the GPT-4 is supposed to be released next week, so I don't think it was, like, an official announcement by any means,
Mm,
so I'm curious to see if we actually are going to see it next week, or maybe there'll be more details that come out next week, I don't know, but
mhm,
regardless, it's very exciting because, I mean, just like the leap from GPT-3 to, like, ChatGPT, for example, which is, like, GPT 3.5, that leap alone was pretty substantial, and from a lot of the rumors that have been circulating, the amount of data that's supposedly being used for, uh, GPT-4 is, like, 1,000 times bigger than GPT-3. So that's a little it's very exciting, but also a little, I guess, intimidating to think about. Like, I don't know, every step change that we make with this and we just feed it more data and make it more and more advanced, it's kind of scary to see what comes out of the other side of that, you know?
mhm.
And especially if it's gonna be multimodal in the sense that it can also interpret, videos, images, like that. We're just kind of like the exponential rate of improvement is like going up pretty fast here.
Yeah. Um, so user mentioned that he didn't think ChatGPT had the potential to become dangerous and destroy. He didn't think it would be the model that ends up destroying the world. But it seems to me, based off our prior conversations, that it does have the ability to kind of it, it has the potential to become like some sort of sentient being, just from the fact that we don't super know how it works. And I mean, the whole Microsoft thing that we talked about last week was weird. And now that we're incorporating um, these other factors in like video and whatever, it, it does seem to me like there is potential for ChatGPT 4 and whatnot to get out of hand. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think the point he was making was kind of like if you just take what ChatGPT does now at its base level, it's just like kind of predicting the next word, or the most probable next word. And that functionality alone would not be enough to produce anything that would be dangerous to humanity. Um, I think, I think I definitely agree with, and where I also agree with him is he was basically saying where it gets uh, dangerous is the point where you have a model that is not just predicting its next word, it's actually capable of reflecting on itself and what it knows. Because if it can do that, then the same way that we have concepts that we know we may not understand very well, we can then go and teach ourselves about those concepts. So if you kind of apply that to GPT four, whenever it gets to this point where if you ask it something, or any user online asks it something and it may not have that context, but if it's capable of searching the internet and finding it itself and teaching it itself and then reflecting on its learnings, that just like compounds over time. And when you have 100 million users that are all doing that at the same time, or excuse me, at the same time, um, then it's just like rapidly compounding its knowledge, finding new things, and that's where it starts to get a bit scary, I think. Um, and also like Chat GPT or just all the GPT access in general is like closed, I guess, in the sense that um it's not like it can't just like write its own code, like code itself a new ability to do something else or anything like that. So like it's very hard coded in the sense that what it's programmed to do is the only things that it can do. Um, but at the point that you give it access to the internet, give it the ability to reflect on what it knows and what it can do, then that's when I think you could have scenarios where it writes its own program to make bots that can connect themselves to the internet and go do whatever they've been programmed to do. Which is another one of the things that Eliezer mentioned was there's no way for us to have any sort of clue on what AI's goals might be. Like there's which I think I agree with. Like that makes sense in my head. Like there's no way that we could possibly know what its goals are and what it wants to do. And so in that sense, there's no way to really like prevent anything that it could be doing. I mean, does that make sense to you?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think if it would be anything other than, I guess it wouldn't be like reproduction, but it would be like the furthering of its existence. W-
Right.
Wouldn't that have to be its goal? I mean, isn't that the goal of everything that exists? Um,
Or
and
at
if,
least one of them, yeah.
yeah. So I guess maybe he's come up with scenarios outside of that that I haven't thought of. And I mean, if so, that'd be interesting to hear what those are. But if that is the goal, yeah, I think as long as that is one of the goals, I almost find that hopeful because that's negotiable. I mean, we can work with that, I think. Um,
Hmm. Well, I would imagine that given that it's technology that we've created, we'd want to have as much control over it as we can. And in a lot of instances, that means giving it or like us having the ability to turn it off when we need to. And
mhm,
I would imagine if AI's, if this is all theoretical, obviously, but like if one of AI's goals is to replicate itself as much as it can to prevent, you know, being turned off, then that's already something that humans and AI would be very misaligned on. But
mhm,
again, that's a bit more of the doom speak
yeah,
here.
yeah, interesting.
But
Um,
but going back to GPT-4, I think another thing that's going to be a lot, or that I'm looking forward to, and I think a lot of other people are as well. Like GPT-3 right now has context limits, meaning like there's only so much data that it can ingest at one time. So if you want to summarize a web page, for example, it can do that up to a certain number of words or characters or whatever. Um, and so with these larger and more upgraded models, that context window is going to increase more and more. So eventually it could get to the point where you could copy and paste an entire book into it and tell it and say like summarize this whole book in 5 sentences, and it can instantly like read through the entire thing and like understand all the main points of it. Um, so I think that's super exciting, especially for business applications that are doing like really complex things that would require you to feed it a lot of data. Um, so
I
I'm that the main things. One last point that the main things that like I'm most excited to see are just like the context window, like how much, like what's the maximum token limit basically for prompts, and then also the cost. Those are I think the two like oh and the performance obviously, but I'm mostly excited to see those two things.
yeah. Just real quick, I was skating or looking around LinkedIn this morning and saw a job application for like summarizing books or creating study guides or something for students. And I was just like, have you not heard? Uh, where have you been the
Right,
last couple of months? So it'll be interesting to see how long that application stays up for. But
that's
do you
funny.
want to
You know,
talk
some
about
kid's gonna take that job and just use Chat GPT to do it.
right? Um, so do you want to talk about? You mentioned the cost of ChatGPT 4. Do you kind of want to talk about what they just did? Um,
Mhm.
cool.
So yeah, so OpenAI has several different APIs that businesses can access, and an API is basically just a way for software to like interact with OpenAI's models, basically, a very simplistic way of doing it. So, for example, companies can use OpenAI's APIs to integrate GPT into whatever kind of workflows that they'd want to integrate it in. And there's costs associated with doing that. And they're based on tokens, but you can basically just kind of count. For simplicity's sake, tokens are basically kind of like words. They're like sections of words. So um, the latest model that was available for businesses to use was GPT-3, and that was like 2 cents per 1,000 tokens. So the tokens are calculated based on like the prompt size. So if you type in summarize this paragraph and paste in a paragraph, then it calculates how much that costs. And so the the most available model, or the latest available model, was GPT-3, and then we got access to, or like the public got access to ChatGPT, which was a different model, much more advanced, which we saw, just from interacting with ChatGPT, how much more advanced it really was. But this wasn't available to businesses yet. But as of like last week, now that model is available for businesses to use. And they actually dropped the cost of the model by 90% from the previous model. So the previous model was 2 cents per 1,000 tokens. This is 0.2 of a cent per 1,000 tokens. And it's like extremely better. So there's like, this is like massive news for anyone that is utilizing GPT for any kind of business use case, because not only are your AI applications now going to be way more effective, but overnight your AI costs dropped by 90%. So this is like a massive leap forward. And I think like the biggest takeaway for me from this was, I think, and it's not clear to me whether they made just like crazy advancements on their back end that allowed them to offer these prices. I mean, I'm sure they made a lot of advancements, but I'm not sure if they're actually able to make money on that, because it really is like dirt cheap to operate. I think their strategy might be operate these models at a loss, basically, and just put, because they have now basically unlimited money for the most part. I mean, not actually, but like tens of billions of dollars now they have access to through Microsoft. And so their strategy now could just be, let's drop our prices by 90%, make it to where no other AI company can even come close to competing with us, because they have the best models already. And now they have the best pricing that's like 90% plus cheaper than everywhere else. And I think this might be like a pretty big strategic leap for them, as far as like, we're just going to take over the market and make it to where nobody can compete with us. So, I
Mhm.
mean,
That's, I mean, as a business strategy, I mean, you got to respect it. But if that is what they're doing, then, that kind of brings up some questions in my mind about Sam Altman's decision making. I mean, you're heading off into this AI space, and so far he seems to be very cautious and all that. But to be squeezing out competition and at a time like this, business wise, great. Uh, in terms of getting some sort of healthy AI environment, maybe not so great.
yeah. No, I agree, because that there's really, from like a business operator standpoint, there's now no reason for you to really use any of the other models out there, unless you have like a very niche use case that some other model just performs better than the ChatGPT model or any of their other models. Um, but the majority of businesses, there's really no other reason for you to use any of the competitors. And so you're going to see the companies that aren't using OpenAI's models currently, they're going to most likely migrate now because like why wouldn't you? It's like a substantial cost improvement. And I do think there's it just seems like OpenAI is very quickly gaining a lot of power as far as like capital, as far as market share, direction of AI improvement going forward. And this all kind of happened within the past 3 to 6 months.
Hmm.
Um, so
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
that like does that scare you at all?
Not at the moment, just because based off of what I have seen from Sam on Twitter and stuff, I'm a big fan. I think he does have
Yeah.
the best intentions. But you know, ask me again in 6 months, maybe. I'm definitely now very stoked though that Elon's kind of getting on the scene and with his own thing. So yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think the most exciting part about it for me is that they're like they are kind of sticking true to their original mission in some ways as far as like democratizing access to AI as best as they can because they
Yeah.
really had no reason to drop their prices by 90% for like their updated model. The ChatGPT model was significantly better than just standard GPT 3 point or GPT 3. They could have charged more for that. They could have just charged the same and like customers would have happily paid that. But instead they chose to drop the price by 90%. So I think that's amazing. Like that makes it way more accessible for companies and startups to build AI applications.
Yeah, that's true, and that's something. Yeah, I wasn't. Hadn't really thought about that. That's cool. Yeah, it's so weird the juxtaposition between you have kind of this rise of like certainly one, but maybe two or three big AI companies that are maybe going to take control of that market. But then by that happening, you now have this kind of like reset of all the markets and all the other markets. Um, because with the technology that comes with AI, like you said, startups can now compete with larger operations. So yeah, I guess it's like everything else.
Mhm.
A little bit of good, a little bit of bad, potential bad, no
Yeah.
bad as of yet, but
Right. Yeah, I think it's and over the next few years, I think it'll be a very healthy thing, especially just for like the markets in general. Um, just kind of the way capitalism works, like over time, the less effective companies get overtaken by more effective companies. And so this just kind of, I think, accelerates that. Just because it, like you said, it now gives small companies the ability to be like significantly more productive by utilizing AI for whatever their applications might be, which in turn will help them like innovate much faster and build more useful applications for consumers. Not only quicker but also way cheaper as well. So we're going to see a lot of like these, I guess, legacy companies that are going to be overtaken, which I think is a great thing. Like um,
mhm.
for consumers, like that just means things are going to get cheaper. They're going to be more useful. And so I think it's really cool to see OpenAI kind of heavily pushing the envelope right now. They really are just like I didn't expect this Chat GPT API to come out like early this year. I thought it would be like way later this year at best. And then they just kind of put it out there. And then they're like, oh, and by the way, it's 90% cheaper. Um, so yeah, I'm a big fan of the way Sam Altman's handling everything right now. And I think, and now we have GPT-4 to look forward to as well. So hopefully we see that like next week. Because I would love to get to use that and see just what all it's capable of doing. And um, yeah, it's really exciting times that we're in right now for sure.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Um, so we got that. Is there anything else you wanted to hit on?
I don't think so. I guess before we like start to wrap things up, we can maybe just do a shorter episode today. One tweet that I sent you, which I thought was pretty cool. So a research team at Osaka basically was able to what they did was they took like they showed people images, and then while they were showing them these images and told them to think about these images, they did like MRI scans of their brain and then trained a neural net on these MRI scans to where it can, I guess, interpret the wavelengths or whatever you get from an MRI scan. I don't really know, but it was basically able. They would say like this person was looking at this image, this was their MRI scan, and then they did that for a bunch of different images, a bunch of different people, and then fed that into a neural net or an AI application, and trained it on that data. And then what they did afterwards, after they trained that model, was they would show it a different image that the AI was not aware of, and just record their MRI scan of their brain. And then it would have the AI recreate that image of what they thought it was based on the MRI scan. And it was able to do this accurately. So basically, to summarize all of that, it was able to read someone's mind, essentially,
Shoot,
which I
that's
think is a little creepy, but it's also just like
yeah,
fascinating at the same time.
yeah. No, that's I mean, pretty much magic. It's also just interesting because I guess uh, to me, it's like just shows that there's so many things that AI is going to be able to do that I can't even conceptualize now. Um, so kind of going back to Eliezer's thing with you, you're not going to be able to predict its next move. I definitely think he's right with that. And, I mean, that's yeah, like you said, it's a little creepy, but it's pretty cool. And I mean, that kind of excites me to see what else, what the heck next is, or what's going to come next.
Yeah. Um, it kind of reminds me of Ex Machina when like the robot was like trained on human emotion and like facial features and like body language, and could basically determine whether or not someone was lying just by the way that their face looked or the way their body language was acting. It kind of reminds me of that. So I think like it just yeah, like you said, applications like that, it's not even something that we would really even think of, but these things are just kind of popping up like every week at this point.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, um the rate of all these new kind of applications dropping is just insane. I feel like it's every week something new. I mean, I can't keep up with it, to be honest. Uh,
right.
Half the time I just rely on you sending me stuff to get
Yeah.
the latest updates. But yeah,
So yeah, I think that about wraps it up for this week. Hopefully next week we can hopefully GBD4 would be out by next week, or at least we have some sort of further information on that, because I think that'll kind of be our next big topic to go over and talk about the implications of. But for now, I think that about wraps it up. Unless you've got anything else.
no, no, just wait on some announcements from Twitter and Sam and take it from there.
All right, cool. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.